Master your emotions without sex. Stoicism. There's a pattern most men don't even realize they're caught in. Something triggers them: stress, loneliness, anger, anxiety, and immediately, without thinking, they reach for the same release: sex. Not connection, not intimacy, just the chemical escape that makes everything quiet for a moment. And it works. For about 10 minutes. Then the emotion returns, unchanged, unprocessed, maybe even stronger. Because you didn't actually deal with it. You just numbed it. And now you're back where you started. Except you've reinforced a pattern that's slowly making you weaker. Here's the truth most men won't tell you. Using sex as an emotional crutch isn't strength. It's avoidance. It's the same mechanism as drinking to forget, scrolling to escape, or working to avoid. Different drug, same dependency. The Stoics understood something crucial. Real emotional mastery doesn't come from finding better escapes. It comes from building the capacity to sit with what you're feeling, understand it, and process it without needing an exit door. Most men spend their entire lives running from their emotions. Strong men learn to face them, to hold them, to work through them without needing sex, substances, or distractions to make them bearable. If you're tired of using physical release as emotional management, if you want to build genuine emotional strength instead of temporary relief, then what comes next might change how you see yourself. And if you're ready to stop running and start mastering, consider subscribing. For the part of you that knows there's a deeper strength waiting. The escape mechanism. Let's be honest about what's happening. For most men, sex has become an emotional regulation tool. Not primarily about connection, not about intimacy, about managing feelings they don't know how to handle any other way. Anxious? Sex quiets it. Stressed? Sex releases it. Lonely? Sex fills it. Angry? Sex dissipates it. Feeling powerless? Sex makes you feel powerful again, at least temporarily. And there's nothing inherently wrong with sex. But when it becomes your primary emotional management strategy, you've created a problem. Because you're not actually processing the emotion. You're just finding a temporary off switch. And what requires an off switch still controls you. Think about it. If you can't sit with anxiety without needing release, anxiety controls you. If you can't process stress without needing an outlet, stress controls you. If you can't handle loneliness without needing to fill it, loneliness controls you. The Stoic alternative. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That power includes the ability to experience emotion without immediately needing to escape it, to sit with discomfort, to process what you're feeling, to understand where it's coming from and what it's trying to tell you. This isn't about becoming celibate, it's about becoming free. Free from needing any external thing, sex, validation, substances, distractions, to manage your internal state. The strong man isn't the one who never feels difficult emotions. He's the one who can feel them fully and remain stable. Who doesn't need an escape hatch every time something uncomfortable surfaces? That's the mastery we're talking about. Not suppression, not avoidance. Sovereignty. The ability to be with yourself in any emotional state without needing to run. Principle 1. Recognize the pattern. The first step to mastering emotions without sex is recognizing when you're using it as emotional management rather than genuine connection. Most men never question this. They feel something uncomfortable. The urge for sex arises. They act on it. They feel temporary relief, and they never connect the dots. They don't see the pattern because they've never stepped back far enough to observe it. The awareness gap. There's usually a trigger, a stressful day, a rejection, a feeling of inadequacy, loneliness, boredom. Something creates emotional discomfort. And your brain, trained over years, immediately suggests the solution it knows: physical release. But that suggestion isn't based on desire for connection. It's based on desire for relief. You're not seeking intimacy, you're seeking escape. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And when you use sex to escape what you're imagining or feeling, you never learn whether the emotion was actually threatening. You never build the capacity to sit with it. You just run, again and again, reinforcing the pattern. The practice. Start tracking the pattern. For 1 week, before any sexual activity, whether partnered or alone, pause and ask, what was I feeling right before this urge arose? Am I seeking connection, or am I seeking relief from something? What emotion am I trying to avoid right now? Just observe. Don't judge. Don't change anything yet. Just see the pattern clearly. Because you can't change what you don't see. And most men are operating on autopilot, never realizing that what feels like desire is often just discomfort seeking an exit. Principle 2. Learn to sit with discomfort. Once you see the pattern, the next step is the hardest: learning to sit with the emotion instead of escaping it. This is where most men fail. The discomfort arises: anxiety, loneliness, inadequacy, anger, and they can't tolerate it. They need it gone immediately. So they reach for the familiar release. But here's what they never discover. The emotion can't actually hurt you. It's uncomfortable, yes, sometimes intensely so, but it's not dangerous. And when you learn to sit with it, when you prove to yourself that you can survive it without escape, something fundamental shifts. The Stoic endurance. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The emotion arising isn't the problem. Your inability to tolerate it without immediate relief, that's the problem. Strong men build tolerance. They practice sitting with discomfort, not because they enjoy it, but because they refuse to be controlled by it. When you can feel anxious and not need to escape it, anxiety loses its power. When you can feel lonely and not need to fill it immediately, loneliness becomes just a temporary state. When you can feel inadequate and not need validation to fix it, inadequacy becomes information, not identity. The practice. Next time the urge arises and you recognize it's driven by emotional discomfort rather than genuine desire, try this. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Just sit with whatever you're feeling. Don't distract, don't escape, don't judge yourself for feeling it. Just be with it. Notice where you feel it in your body. Notice the thoughts that come with it. Notice how it shifts and changes. You'll probably notice something surprising. The intensity peaks, then starts to fade. Emotions are waves. They rise, they crest, they fall. But you only discover this if you stop running long enough to watch the cycle complete. And once you've proven to yourself that you can survive 10 minutes of discomfort without escape, try 20, then 30. You're building emotional endurance, the capacity to be with yourself in any state. Principle 3. Process the emotion. Don't numb it. Sitting with discomfort is the first step. Processing it is the second. Because emotions aren't random. They're information. They're your internal system trying to tell you something. But when you immediately numb or escape emotion, you never receive the message. You silence the alarm without investigating what triggered it. Understanding the signal. Every emotion has a purpose. Anxiety signals perceived threat or uncertainty. It's asking, what do I need to prepare for? What's outside my control that I'm trying to control? Loneliness signals disconnection. It's asking, where are my genuine connections? What kind of relationship am I actually craving? Anger signals boundary violation. It's asking, what line was crossed? What do I need to protect or address? Inadequacy signals misalignment. It's asking, Where am I measuring myself against standards that aren't mine? Where am I seeking external validation? When you process the emotion, instead of numbing it, you get the information. And with information, you can take actual action that addresses the root cause. The practice. When you feel the urge for sexual release as emotional management, ask these questions instead. What is this emotion trying to protect me from? What need is it pointing to? What would actually address this versus just temporarily numb it? Write down the answers. Don't just think them. Writing forces clarity. Maybe you're anxious because you're avoiding a difficult conversation. Sex won't fix that. Having the conversation will. Maybe you're lonely because you've been avoiding genuine connection. Sex might provide temporary closeness, but it won't build the relationships you actually need. Maybe you're feeling inadequate because you're measuring yourself against others. Sex might provide temporary validation, but it won't address the internal work of building self-worth. Process the emotion. Address the actual need. Watch how the compulsive urge for release diminishes when you deal with the root cause. Principle 4. Build alternative regulation strategies. You need to replace the pattern with something else, not just remove it and leave a void. Because the emotions will still arise, and you need healthy ways to process them. Most men only have one tool in their emotional regulation toolkit: sex. So when they try to stop using it as a crutch, they have nothing else. And they fail. Strong men build a toolkit, multiple strategies for managing emotional states without needing external escape. The Stoic Toolkit. Marcus Aurelius journaled. Seneca walked. Epictetus practiced breathing and present moment awareness. They had multiple ways to process emotion, to return to center, to regain clarity. You need the same. Not one strategy, multiple. So when emotion arises, you have options beyond escape. The practice. Build at least 3 alternative emotional regulation strategies. Physical release, non-sexual. Intense exercise. Run until the anxiety burns off. Lift until the anger transforms into power. Cold exposure. Cold shower, ice bath. Resets your nervous system. Teaches you to stay calm under stress. Breath work. Box breathing, 4-7-8 breathing. Activates your parasympathetic nervous system. Calms your body. Mental processing. Journaling. Write what you're feeling without filter. Get it out of your head onto paper. Meditation. Sit with the emotion. Observe it without judgment. Let it pass through. Walking. Moving meditation. Let your body move while your mind processes. Connection, non-sexual. Call a friend and have a real conversation. Not small talk, real talk about what you're going through. Engage in a hobby or creative outlet that requires focus. Channel the energy into creation. Help someone else. Sometimes the best way to process your own pain is to alleviate someone else's. Build these into your routine. Practice them when you're not emotionally activated, so they're available when you are. Because when you have multiple tools, you're no longer dependent on one. And dependency is what we're breaking. Principle 5. Understand the difference between desire and escape. Not all sexual urges are emotional avoidance. Sometimes you just want physical intimacy. Sometimes it's genuine desire for connection. The key is knowing the difference. Most men can't tell the difference because they've never asked. They just feel the urge and act on it without investigating what's driving it. The distinction. Genuine desire. Arises from a place of wholeness, not lack. Seeks connection, not just release. Enhances the relationship or experience. Leaves you feeling more integrated, not more empty. Emotional escape. arises from discomfort, stress, anxiety, or emptiness, seeks relief, not connection, provides temporary numbness, not lasting fulfillment, leaves you feeling the same or worse after the release fades. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." If you want to be a man who uses sex for connection, not escape, you have to identify when you're about to use it for the wrong reason, and choose differently. The practice. Before acting on sexual urges, ask, is this coming from wholeness or emptiness? Am I seeking connection or just relief? Will this enhance my life or just numb my discomfort? How will I feel an hour after this? Honest answers reveal honest motivations, and honest motivations allow for honest choices. You're not denying yourself sex. You're becoming selective about when and why you engage with it. You're reclaiming it as an expression of connection rather than a coping mechanism. And that shift from compulsive to intentional changes everything. Principle 6. Address the root cause. Here's the brutal truth. If you're constantly using sex as emotional management, there's usually a deeper issue you're avoiding. Maybe it's chronic stress you haven't addressed. Maybe it's a relationship that's unfulfilling. Maybe it's a lack of purpose or direction. Maybe it's unprocessed trauma. Maybe it's a fundamental disconnection from yourself. Sex becomes the band-aid you keep applying without ever treating the wound underneath. And the wound keeps bleeding. The Stoic investigation. Seneca wrote, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable. But you can't be unconquerable if you're constantly running from what's inside you. You have to turn and face it. What are you really avoiding? What discomfort are you trying to numb? What truth are you not ready to confront?" These aren't easy questions, but they're necessary. Because until you address the root cause, you'll just keep cycling through different escape mechanisms. Sit down with a journal. No distractions. Ask yourself, what emotion shows up most frequently before I seek sexual release? When did this pattern start? What was happening in my life when I first learned to use sex this way? What would I have to face if I couldn't escape through sex anymore? The answers might be uncomfortable. Sit with that discomfort. This is the work. Maybe you need therapy to process old trauma. Maybe you need to have difficult conversations in your relationship. Maybe you need to make a career change because your work is draining your soul. Maybe you need to build genuine friendships instead of surface connections. Whatever it is, address it directly. Not through temporary numbing, but through actual change. Because real emotional mastery isn't about better coping mechanisms. It's about building a life where you don't need constant coping. Principle 7. Build genuine connection. Here's what most men miss. They're not actually sex deprived. They're connection deprived. They mistake the need for intimacy, for being seen, for genuine human connection as a need for sexual release. And so they keep seeking sex, wondering why it never truly satisfies. Because sex without connection is just a more elaborate form of masturbation. It might involve another person, but if there's no real intimacy, you're still fundamentally alone. The deeper need. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We were born to work together, like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower. To obstruct each other is unnatural." Humans are social creatures. We need connection, real connection. The kind where you're seen, known, accepted, where you can be vulnerable, where you don't have to perform. And when you're starved of that connection, Your brain tries to fill the void, often with sex, because sex can temporarily create the illusion of intimacy without requiring the vulnerability of real intimacy. The practice. Instead of seeking sexual release, seek genuine connection. Have real conversations, not small talk. Real talk about fears, dreams, struggles, truths. Be vulnerable with safe people. Share what you're actually going through, not just the highlight reel. Build friendships based on mutual growth and support, not just shared activities. If you're in a relationship, prioritize emotional intimacy before physical intimacy. Talk, listen, be present, connect. You'll notice something. When your need for genuine connection is met, your compulsive need for sexual release diminishes. Not because you want sex less, but because you're no longer trying to use it to fill a void it was never designed to fill. Sex becomes what it's meant to be, an expression of connection, not a substitute for it. Mastering your emotions without using sex as a crutch isn't about denying yourself pleasure. It's about reclaiming power. When you can sit with any emotion without needing to escape it, you're free. When you can process what you're feeling instead of numbing it, you're growing. When you can distinguish between genuine desire and emotional avoidance, you're conscious. When you address root causes instead of symptoms, you're healing. When you build genuine connection instead of temporary relief, you're fulfilled. This isn't easy work. It requires honesty most men aren't willing to face. It requires sitting with discomfort most men immediately run from. It requires building new patterns when the old ones are so deeply ingrained. But it's the difference between being controlled by your emotions and mastering them, between using sex as an escape and experiencing it as genuine connection, between living reactively and living deliberately. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And you can't be master of yourself if you need external things, sex, substances, distractions, to regulate your internal state. True mastery is the ability to be with yourself in any emotional state and remain stable. To feel everything and break at nothing. To process without numbing. To sit without escaping. That's freedom. Not doing whatever you feel like. Being powerful enough to feel whatever arises without needing it to go away. So here's the question to carry forward. What emotion are you using sex to avoid? And what would happen if you faced it instead? Not to shame yourself, just to see clearly. Because clarity is always the first step. The quiet work you do today, recognizing your patterns, sitting with discomfort, processing your emotions, addressing root causes, building genuine connection, that's the work that transforms boys into men. Stay focused, stay grounded, and remember, real strength isn't about never feeling difficult emotions. It's about being able to feel them without needing an escape route. That's mastery. That's freedom. That's power. Build it.